All right, welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and we got a huge week. It's Wednesday, rivalry week. We've got Red River, maybe a new rivalry of sorts budding in the Big Ten. Ohio State traveling to Eugene to take on Oregon. Also, we got USC traveling out to Penn State. We'll get into some of James Franklin's comments about the issues that they've got to be dealing with. It seems, like I said, no one really thought through this national Big Ten. Like we kind of did on paper and like, oh yeah, there'll be air travel involved. There'll be flights. But the reality is some of these airports maybe have some physical limitations for being able to fly large aircraft cross country when it talks to runway length and the weight of the planes and the size and what you need to take off, at least per the FAA. So got all that going here. But off the top, it's Ohio State, Oregon. And I wanted to make sure we brought in someone who is uniquely qualified to talk about this, someone who played for the Oregon Ducks, someone that does a great job talking about college football, NFL football, all over the place, a guy who's a friend who's had him on before, great friend of the show, and talking about Oregon, a former offensive lineman, which is what we really want to hear, is how the battle of the trenches is going to be won or lost. Our guy, Mr. Geoff Schwartz. Jeff, how we doing?
I'm excited, man. This is a fun game. I feel like both teams have had sort of a 5-game warm-up for this game, right? Like this is what we've been talking about for months now, and it is finally here. And I feel like the teams are what we thought they would be heading this week. So a lot of fun, man.
Go ahead, Bob.
Definitely a lot of fun. You know, you mentioned like kind of the 5-week warm-up, and I think that was kind of true for both. Maybe getting some sluggish starts on both sides. No one's truly been tested. Had a couple games here and there that against some better competition as we've kind of ramped up through this. When you look at this Oregon team, Jeff, they're much better, I think, on the offensive and defensive side, especially running the ball, than they were in the first couple weeks.
Yes.
What has been that change or transition?
Well, everyone has injuries, right? And Oregon had some injuries on the offensive line. And they decided to roll out an offensive line in week 1 and part of the Boise State game that wasn't good enough. We had a walk-on center. Look, walk-ons play, it happens, right? But at Oregon, when your aspirations are national championships, it's hard to play players that are not of that caliber and that really sort of put our offensive line behind. And we still had 500 yards against Idaho. It wasn't like the worst game we ever had. We just didn't put the ball in the end zone. We made that change heading into the Oregon State game. And since then, it's been really good. Now, it's not maybe as good as we've seen in the past on the 2019 offensive line, even last year before that to an extent, but it's getting better. And the pass protection is much better now, Bobby, which is super important because Dillon Gabriel is a smaller quarterback, right? And when you have guys like that, they have to be protected. They're not going to see over the line, right? And a lot of what happened the first couple of weeks is the guard and centers were being pushed back. A lot of times the center right into his vision, right? When you have a shorter quarterback, you have to have that really firm pocket in the front, big old offensive lineman in the front. And we've done better of that the last couple of weeks. And I think just like in everything, the box score is not everything, right? Dillon Gabriel's had a couple of red zone turnovers that have made games that probably should have been 35-3 at halftime to 28-10 at halftime. So, there's some mistakes that have to be cleaned up, but the offensive line is done a lot better last 3 weeks.
Well, so you just gave me a nugget, right? That Ty Hamilton, Tyleik Williams put pressure up front because those are our defensive tackles. I'm going to go on to the defensive side of the ball, and I know Tosh very well, your defensive coordinator. Love Tosh, love his intensity and his juice that he brings. You had Ashton Jeanty, again, number 1 running back in the country, up there for the Heisman, 192 yards. Again, week 2, right? But now you're going against an Ohio State team. And you're starting to watch some Ohio State film, and we got this 1-2 punch in our running backs. Like that's going to be a key to allowing Oregon to have success to try to limit what they can do on first and second down in the run game.
Yeah, look, that game is interesting, the Boise State game, because I charted, I think he had 25 rushes, I think, and 10 of those rushes were 3 or less yards. Like Oregon did a good job. He had 3 explosives essentially, and one of them, a linebacker and a T tackle ran into each other instead of tackling Jeanty, which is never a spot you want to be in. And 2, excuse me, I'm a little under the weather here. Game, not to excuse poor play, but we fumbled up 27-20. Next play has 70-yard touchdown run. If we don't fumble, it's 34-20 most likely, and they don't run the ball anymore in that game, right? So I think that there are some things we need to work on, and our linebackers, for the most part, it's the linebacker problem. They've gone better throughout the season, which is what you would expect we do. But I am worried about that. What I'm most worried about is not the explosive runs, to be honest with you guys. It's a nickel and diming, right? It's the 4-yard run, the 5-yard run, the 3-yard run, the 7-yard run. I'm not worried about the long run. I mean, it's going to happen, right? You guys have excellent skill players. You're going to hit some home runs, but it's more about, can we get off the field, right? Can we get Will Howard into third and long, which I think reciprocally you guys want to do that to us, right? Like, so to me, it's more about first and second down defense, not really explosive plays that we are able to, it's, you know, can you go stop the run on first down? So now it's second and 10 or second and 9. It changes the play calling. So that's what I'm concerned about from the Oregon side is not really explosive runs, but just making sure that we get third down into an advantageous situation for us.
What is the strength of that Oregon defense? You know, they brought in the tackle transfers, and Derek Harmon's been very good. Caldwell been good as well. You know, Michigan State transfer with Harmon coming in, been very explosive. I mean, is that the strength of this defense? Is the interior front, or is it somewhere else, Geoff?
Well, it's our defensive line. It's really good. I think people probably have not watched much, and they see that the Boise State game and think like, oh, this defensive line must not be very good. I mean, their havoc rate is in the top 15 right now. They hit the quarterback. They're strong and physical inside, and we're deep too. Like we play 8 to 10 guys on a given game up front. And I think we still need to work on just one-on-one pass rush, you know, like in third and down situations, generating pressure. But that is a big difference from last year to this year, is that we don't have to pressure as much in those situations because we're getting home with 4. Now, this is the best test we're going to have, right? Your offensive line this year has played better than any year I've watched them in the last 5 to 7 years. I think one quote issue with Ohio State over the years is like the offensive line kind of looks good coming out the bus and doesn't really reciprocate down the field. Not this year. It's played pretty well this year. You know, like it's done a better job this year. So it's going to be a test, man. It's going to be a battle, right? It's going to be, you know, trying to get those little wins here and there to make sure that our linebackers are freed up to make plays. But I like our defensive line. It's really good. Harmon leads the country in pressures from D tackle. Birch, I think, has 5 sacks. Mateo has 4 sacks. So it's a group that's getting after it this year.
I love these games because these are true matchup games, good versus good. Why we love college football and high level of football, still going to come down to turnovers. What are you seeing from Oregon offensively that they have to establish or do versus this Ohio State defense?
So I was watching a lot of your defense actually today on film against Michigan State and against Iowa. And a couple of things that I think that we haven't done very much of this season. And I think the same thing is true for you guys. Like, you've held back things, and certainly in the second half of games, we've like done nothing. We just run the ball and throw a couple passes and go home. Play action pass seems to have worked and sort of move the pocket, right? And I think those are situations we're going to try to unveil in this game. So I don't think you want to get in a situation where it's just a straight up like pass blocking one-on-one, right? You want to be able to move the aiming point, move the launch point, give different looks. And one thing I've noticed, and I'd love for you guys to opinion on this, I think it's interesting, is when Ohio State pressures, there's no surprise. Like, they are right there. And Oregon has hit some home runs this year on checks against pressure. And I'm curious sort of see that back and forth, because Iowa and Michigan State, those are games I watched. They're not checking the sideline. They're calling a play and they're running the play. Oregon's not going to do that, right? Oregon's going to get in the line of scrimmage. They got a play called. They're going to see what's up. Either the radio comms are still working, or they're going to turn the sideline and they're going to change the play. And I'm curious to see that dynamic where Ohio State is like safety down, nickels creeping in, linebackers showing. Are you going to now back out of it on a check? Are you coming? Because I think that when pressure is shown, we've done a good job this season if we identify it early. If we don't, Gabriel gets hit. So that's a two-edged sword, right? If you're able to disguise it a little bit longer, Gabriel sometimes doesn't see the field quite as well. So there's little matchups like that I think are very fun. Your safeties, by the way, holy heck, guys. I think a big difference between college and NFL defenses is safeties filling on the run. Your safeties fill on the run like NFL safeties. It is like they are down the box and they're down fast. And you know how it is in the run game. We typically say a running back has to be the safety. Like, those are the rules. We don't have enough guys to block safeties. And if that excuse me, if that comes down to it, man, your guys tackle really, really well from the safety position.
That is, you know, Lathan Ransom, he comes on with us every Monday, you know, 5th-year player. You get these veteran guys now, and then also having Caleb Downs, who, I mean, Caleb Downs, Geoff, I don't know if you watched him on film. Like, I don't know if I've watched the guy take a false step as he fits the line of scrimmage. He's always square.
So good. He started as a true freshman for Nick Saban.
Yeah.
Like, he is an exceptional player. So, I don't know how we attack the safety team. I think it's going to have to be sort of underneath, intermediate stuff, which is what we're doing. Take a couple some shots here and there. And we have Tez Johnson's really good. Our wide receiver is our number one guy. He's 5 yard, 6 yard catch. Go further than that. So the back and forth here is going to be a lot of fun to see sort of who takes the schematic advantage.
So you're a guy that was in that Chip Kelly offense there at Oregon. Chip Kelly now being at Ohio State, played him a couple times when he was at UCLA. Talk a little bit about the Chip Kelly effect on this game, and not necessarily his familiarity with Oregon and everything else, but just the way he runs the football, how he calls stuff up. That's what I think this offensive line, people were worried about it. Like, Chip always seems to have pretty good offensive lines. I don't know if that's as much as him and Justin Fry developing it, or as much as the way that he calls things to make sure guys are in good position.
Well, I think when you watch Chip is he's a run guy first over pass, right? And that's why I think the integration of him and Ryan Day is so interesting, because Ryan Day is obviously very pass heavy in his mindset, and Chip is very run heavy, and they haven't had to do a lot of the passing stuff yet because you haven't needed it. So this is a game where I think we see pass concepts we have not seen yet from this offense because you haven't had to use it yet. And maybe this game you don't have to use it. I don't know. But yeah, it's a very, and the thing about Chip's run game is he will cater it to what the given week is. He's not a guy that's like, we're an outside zone team, all we do is outside zone. He will do what fits for that week. If it's outside zone game, if inside zone game, duo game, power, counter, he will cater it, and then of course he'll work the play action pass off those. I think that's a big part of it for both teams. I think both teams have to win first down. If you don't win first down, you're like, I'm not so worried about Oregon running the ball. I'm worried about your pass rush on 3rd and 9. Like, if we get in a situation where we're pass rushing every single, it's not going to be good for us. Same for you guys. I don't think you want to be in 3rd and 9. The difference is we don't have Jeremiah Smith. Like, we don't have a throw the ball up and just make a play. Like, that's a big part of this game. Like, I think Ohio State has more ways to win the game. I think Oregon can win the game, but we have sort of one way to do so. We don't have a Jeremiah Smith guy. I mean, he's incredible. We don't have that player. We have a corner that like Muhammad's really good, but he's not 6'4". And so I'm curious to see, like, if there's anytime Ohio State's in a bad situation, just break glass, throw it to Jeremiah Smith. we don't have an answer for that. We just in theory, I guess you do, right? You physical them up, jam at the line of scrimmage. You hope that the refs are sort of allowing you to be physical, through the play, and you sort of knock them off balance. It goes up to make a catch, but otherwise, like, there's no answer for that player.
What is the? Because I was just thinking about this. Like, Dylan Gabriel has 3 rushing touchdowns this year.
Yeah,
that's something too, right? Being able to have a quarterback, which I think has been the difference this year in Ohio State with Will Howard in the run game, especially in that red zone. Is that something that Dylan, like, they're going to have to lean on a little bit to make sure that you can account for, because the man can run.
I think both teams are going to do this. Like, Will Howard has not had a lot of keeps this year, right? He hasn't done that a lot, and Oregon's played more zone this year than in previous years, because man coverage, you can really bust those runs if you don't have someone on the quarterback, right? In man coverage, especially on 3rd down. Oregon's had a problem early in the season, allowing quarterbacks to scramble on 3rd down without having a spy on them. We play more zone. It's been a little more helpful last couple of weeks. But yeah, I think both quarterbacks, Dylan Gabriel ran for a touchdown last week. I think we're going to see Will Howard do it a lot. We saw the second half of the Michigan State game against us. They came out in the second half and just ran Aiden Childs a bunch on zone reads, and it really, got him some yards. It didn't get him in the end zone, but I think we're going to see both quarterbacks use their legs. And Gabriel hasn't done a lot of it. Well, Howard, they haven't had. It's just so fun about this game, right? Like, no one's had to do any of these things we're talking about. So I think this comes down to, again, like, reading your keys, right? Like, reading your keys. You're going to see things you haven't seen so far this season. Both teams are playing players they have not played all season. I mean, maybe you say that Oregon's played Genty, so they're ready for the running backs. But, like, it's a game where I think it's pretty evenly matched on the roster. Ohio State's better at certain places, but you're just going to see a lot of new in this game. And so, who adjusts the best? Who has the best eyes on defense and offense? Who can make adjustments at halftime? Things like that. Because Ohio State's done a really good job this year of sort of making adjustments, right? Some games have started slow and then boom, like, taking off in the second half with a lot of points.
All right, last one before we get you out of here. You're very familiar with that environment. Not many people in the Big Ten have been familiar with Oregon. I think that there's I don't know if you've seen this, the stat with the two time zone travels, either east or west. 1-7 outside of Indiana beating UCLA. That's kind of the outlier, and the games really haven't been all that close. Kind of a 2-touchdown average. What is Autzen going to be like out there for a big night game East Coast, but it will be setting in the evening and should have all the juice of a big time event?
The one thing I like about social media is the confidence of fan bases. Your fan base feels very confident that's not going to be loud. I'm just telling you, it's going to be loud. Now, whether or not you win or lose that game based on that, I don't know. I think Ohio State's plenty capable of playing in a loud environment. But to pretend like that because Happy Valley has more fans, it's going to be very loud. Will it matter if you score fast? I don't know. The thing about Oregon fans is important. Is it's about they know sort of when to cheer, if that makes sense, right? When to be loud. And it sort of goes like first down to certain noise, and then second down to certain, third down to certain noise, and it sort of builds up. And yeah, it's going to be an issue, I think. We've seen teams struggle with sort of that environment. I mean, I would imagine it's Will Howard, the loudest environment he's played in. It matters most, I think, at quarterback to any other position. So yeah, it matters, I think, a little bit. Does it make or break the game? I don't think so, but it will mean something because people who have played there continue to say how loud it is and how raucous that environment is. And we're going to have 60,000 fans there, and it's going to be crazy. I can't wait. It'll be a lot of fun. I think you guys have more ways to win. We can certainly win if things break our way. And I think it comes down to, it's not a great spot to be in, I think, for both teams, where it's like, I hope our quarterback doesn't have to win the game for us. I think we're both in that spot where, like, you just hope that the run game and your defense take care of a lot of things, so your quarterback doesn't have to do all the big plays.
He's an Oregon alum. He's 8-year NFL vet. You hear him on Sirius. You hear him on Fox. Doing a great job. Just a fat kid living the dream. Geoff Schwartz is smarter than you. And his brother Mitchell played for the Browns. So he's all in good company. Thank you for spending some time with us, Geoff. We really appreciate it.
Take care, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, brother.
He's Geoff Schwartz, one of the best. Spending some time with us there. A lot of insight on Oregon. Attention, parents and athletes. Protect what matters most with Export mouth guards, trusted by professional athletes, designed by NHL team dentists. Export mouth guards are scientifically tested to absorb high-impact hits to protect both your teeth and your brain. There are 3 layers of custom protection. They're 3D printed to your grill with a patented carbon fiber for better fit, better performance, maximum comfort, clear communication, so you can focus on your game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Go to exportguards.com and save 15% on day with /Bobby Key to save 15%. Protect what matters most. More on the Bobby Carpenter Show coming up next.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like. I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, Schlegel, I want to toss this stat out to you right now. This was thrown to me with my guys on off campus. I'm on Sirius XM throughout the week from 3 to 6. And so here's some notes, some nuggets, you will, when you start talking about travel with Big Ten teams going across multiple time zones to play. Home teams are 7-1 in conference this year, with the only road win being Indiana over UCLA, which that's going to be the outlier in all of this data. Average final score, 29 to 20.6 to the home team. If you remove Indiana, UCLA, which Indiana beat them up pretty good by about 28, 30 points, it goes to 31 to 17.5. So basically a 2-touchdown victory to the home team. With the exception of Indiana, UCLA, only one road team has ever led by more than 7, and that was Wisconsin up on USC by 10 before they ultimately lost that game. And if you take away that Indiana UCLA game again, only one road team has scored first, and that was Washington, which had an opening score over Rutgers. So everybody designed this whole thing, acted like it wasn't a big deal. Maybe after a couple years, it might not be a big deal, but there's historical data that shows when Big Ten teams had West, they really struggle. This is kind of showing it's struggling for both. Your thoughts on some of this time zone change, and maybe some of it, Schlegs, is even due to lack of familiarity with the city, with the venue, and maybe the logistical setup?
Yeah, normally these are things in the NFL that are taken care of preseason. So, we played over in London with the Jaguars. You go over, you already know the hotel, you know where you're going to practice or do your walkthrough. Again, we were staying there longer, but even let's take it from going from New York or Cincinnati out to Seattle, right? Like you go through, you know the venue, you know where you're doing your walkthrough, you know where you're doing your team meetings, you know the proximity to the stadium, you know the bus route that you're taking. All you know where you got to set up your training room that's already on site, because all of that stuff is driven over and set up before you get there. All the logistics are already worked out. I don't know if that happens at the college level. You would think that it does, because if you don't plan, you plan to fail, right? So, and that's kind of the point. I think all teams can handle this a little differently. Here's the one thing I will say about Ohio State. Ohio State has played a lot. Again, whether it was a Rose Bowl or whatever the case may be, going across time zones, the effect on the player, especially long ones, the critical component are when you get there, do you make the environment the same and continue the same routine? I think this game happening for us at night, right there, though it's going to be 3:30 there, it's still going to be 7:30 here. That bodes well for us. So though you might have to wake up a little different time, like get that, you're still going to be able to take that nap. Right. So I think guys will be fine with the way that we're traveling out to Oregon.
I think the plan is for Ryan, what they're trying to do is they're heading out on Friday and they're going to leave pretty early, and they're going to try to keep the entirety of the same schedule. Now, it's going to be tough because guys are going to sleep, I'm sure, on the plane. But I think the goal is for them to stay on that Eastern time. So then you just treat it like a 3:30 game. You still wake up early, you go through your normal meetings, you do everything ultimately the same, so that it doesn't feel like there's anything changing or anything different. I think that should be an effective way to go about it. I know a lot of teams have done a lot of different stuff. Penn State's going out early. They've got their own issues that we'll get into in headlines about ultimately what's happening there. But I think that they're trying to do the best they can. This is an experimental process. If you look at this, though, Ohio State, I think that they went out to UCLA in the regular season and won in 2001. It was the week after 9/11. They went out there when you, I think, were with Urban.
I was
like
coaching.
you played Cal.
Yeah.
They won in Cal. I think Tress won in Seattle at one point with James in between us and when you came back with Urban.
Yep.
Then the last one, Oregon came out to Columbus and won. So those are like 4 examples of road teams winning in this situation. So I think talent obviously matters the most. Quality of team matters the most. But it's been pretty interesting to see this, because people have kind of passed it off as a nothing burger. And it's a lot different for college players as opposed to guys who are NFL dudes who do get used to this each and every week.
Well, I mean, it's that, Bob, and it's also, people talk about the SEC. They're having a little bit of these things in the Big 12 and the ACC because of coast to coast and Miami, right, and all these different things. But the SEC is very, very condensed in their geographical location. The ACC, the Big 12, though it's centrally located, is pulling teams in. It's not as varied as much. But the ACC and the Big 10 have to deal with these things. But again, to me, it all goes back to, when does the game start? And if it starts at 3:30, right, that's a lot different than it starting at noon, basically being 9 o'clock for you. And to your point, Bob, flying out early and keeping best Fridays in football when you get there, you want to get some blood flow. You want to be activated. You want to keep on the routine as much as you possibly can. Hey, guys, don't sleep on the plane. Here's what you're going to do. Or if you're going to do it, take a nap. Because you're also going to understand, hey, here's going to be the bedtime, bed check. You need to get some sleep. Being able to communicate those things. And there's a lot of different stuff, right? Bring the Normatec boots on the plane. Have the Fireflies that just help circulate the calves while you're sitting for a long time.
Like that. It's like a massage all the time.
Right when you get there, we're going to do certain things just to get you activated. They're going to do that. That's what you do. So you're not really worried about that as from a performance standpoint, as long as you take the measures to be able to do those things when you get there. But that comes with planning.
All right. Got our headlines coming up next. College gambling, harassment happening. Who could have ever thought on social media? Bobby Carpenter Show coming up next. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bobby Carpenter. I want to give a huge thank you and a shout out to Affinity Whole Health, the leaders in the testosterone replacement industry. I've been on a testosterone replacement program for a few years right now, and I've got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer. Affinity Whole Health has allowed me to be the best version of myself, both mentally and physically. I loved how easy it was to get started. I booked my free consultation, met with my prescriber, checked my numbers, and Affinity Whole Health designed a program that was customized to fit my needs. So I'm telling you guys, if you have low energy, you want to get rid of that spare tire around the waist or take it to the next level in the bedroom, Affinity Whole Health is the place to get started. So don't wait any longer. 5 minutes of your time, book your free consultation. You're going to love the way you feel. All right, Schlegs, we're in our headlines. Remember, they're brought to you by our friends over at Affinity Whole Health. They offer personalized treatment plans to help you feel better, whether you're struggling with weight loss, muscle loss, poor sleep, low energy. Maybe you're just not getting around as well as you used to. The kids want you to do stuff and you don't have the same energy. Hell, I should know. I've got 4 kids. They're pulling me in a million different directions. I've been a patient there for 7 years. They can help you with all of it. They provide expert guidance to help safely reach your health goals. They've got all of Ohio covered. If you're in Columbus, they've got you. If you're in Cleveland, they've got you. If you're over in Indy or up in Chicago, they have offices there as well. So set up a free consultation by going to affinitywholehealth.com. That's affinitywholehealth.com. So Schlegs,
Yeah.
set up gambling, legalized sports betting, legalized through most of the United States. You can bet on college games. Now, sometimes you can bet on props, player props, individual performances of players, which is kind of like, a fantasy element that people like. But there's been some pushback. The NCAA did this study, if you want to throw that up, Pat, did this study about college athletes and the social media, and they tracked the coaches and everything. And people, surprisingly, or Schlegs probably unsurprisingly, are harassing these college athletes when their bets don't hit. Asking them for their money back, asking them for this and that, maybe telling them they should die, which is highly inappropriate. But I don't know what people expected to have happen. We have social media, which is instant access to players, and now we're allowed to bet on games. And so with that, I think this was the most logical outcome.
Yeah, where's my money? Why didn't you stay in there? You guys were up. You didn't get my prop bet. I don't even know about gambling because I don't gamble. But when you have this access, you're just going to have to block a lot of people. And to think that, especially college, like they're the ones calling the plays, they're the ones making the checks, they're the ones that are determining their playing time, that is completely false. And they're going to be up and down every single week. We just saw it last week, man. 5 teams in the top 11 down. Boom, poof, David Copperfield no longer there. That just is what it is when it comes to gambling. And, what did everybody expect to happen? I mean, I don't know. It's just a byproduct of it. So, whether you are strong enough to just say, block that guy, I'm not going to let it affect me, or turn the social media off. I just, it's part of what is there. We talked about this with the Pete Rose thing, for Pete's sake, and that the MLB is sponsored by gambling. And we're talking about a guy in the Hall of Fame that should be in the Hall of Fame, not being there when he bet on baseball and all those different things. So I don't know, man. It's people, imperfect people doing imperfect things.
It is imperfect people doing imperfect things. You know what? The Big Ten and the SEC, we'll throw this up real quick, Pat, are meeting today. And we'll get into this more throughout the rest of the week. But I wanted to touch on it because we touched on it when they said they're going to have the meeting. Tony Petitti, Greg Sankey, people from the offices are meeting down in Nashville today as the epicenter of the college football world. They're going to try to figure out, hey, can we get some sort of scheduling agreement? They want the SEC to go to 9 games, kind of want to flex their muscles, Schlegs, on the rest of the college football world and force maybe 4 teams from each conference to get auto bids, which I don't know what the big deal is because I think they'll all automatically get in anyway, just being selected. But I feel like this is a pretty darn big deal that's happening down in Nashville and Tennessee today.
It is, because one, if you look at the top 25 and just like the play that is in, there's a lot of parity in the Big 12. You had Miami almost going down to Cal, and they've had 2 back-to-back weeks of that with Va-Tech being in their conference and then now the Cal game. But just the parity that are there, and then equating that to the Big Ten and the SEC and the upper echelons of those week in and week out in the schedules, upper Caliente, but upper echelon, right, of those teams. You know, we saw it in the Alabama-Georgia game, and you're going to see it this week, Ohio State, Oregon. And then, you know, those teams are going to be there, but it's just good on good every single week, and anybody could potentially beat you. How does that impact the college football playoff when they perceive that the best football is played in those 2 conferences? Why not join forces and try to get 4? Because we produce more revenue by having more teams in the playoff that go to allowing for a better conference. I understand why they're meeting. And I can honestly understand the pushback from the other 2 conferences. Hey, it's called the Power 4, not the Power 2. And now you got the 2 of the 4 talking amongst each other, right? To be able to do something that can set them up in give them a competitive advantage going into the college football playoff, that the championship is won by one of those 2 conferences.
Absolutely. So we'll dive more into that and to kind of see what happens, see what comes out of those meetings. Could be a lot, could be a little, hoping they have some scheduling agreement for the non-conference, because I think that would be dynamite. By the way, Ohio State's playing Bama, Georgia, and Texas in no particular order over the next 8 years. So they've got a full SEC slate coming at you anyway. All right, that's it for our headlines, brought to you by Affinity. Next up, we've got Tailgate Talk, where we answer your questions. And you fired away a bunch yesterday, didn't get to all of them. We'll finish some of that up here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the
Building a home for the people who are worth it. Stepping out, throwing in a line, and dropping the tailgate for a picnic. And finding far-off campsites with the people you're closest to. Upgrade your truck, Jeep, or Bronco with over 1 million parts and accessories. And bring your truck to life. Real Truck.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, Schlegs, now we're going to go to our Tailgate Talk, brought to you by our friends over at Real Truck, the #1 truck accessory brand in the United States with top-selling upgrades for the ultimate tailgate party. We've upgraded our trucks. I've upgraded my Jeep. Got all kinds of options there that you can do for internal, external, make it look sweet, functionality. They're all there for you. So gear up this offseason and this season and bring your truck to life at realtruck.com. All right, Schlegs, we got a couple of questions that were fired away yesterday. One coming at me from CAG, Cage, Ohio, regarding CJ Hicks, linebacker, 5-star guy out of Kettering Alter, in his 3rd season now, hoping for a breakout year. Really hasn't got a chance to play that much. And the question firing away, Pat, we can throw it up when we get it. But is CJ Hicks, and this is what I always find interesting when people aren't playing, is the question is, you not understanding the playbook. Seem like he has all the talent, but is missing the it factor, like somewhere. Is the crystal ball portal in his transfer in his future? I don't like to speculate on guys transferring. CJ seems super engaged in everything that's going on. He's played some, probably not as much as he would have liked. Arvell Reese has probably played a little better. CJ's an elite blitzer, so hopefully they'll be able to figure out kind of him doing more of some more of that while he continues to round out something else. But CJ's a smart guy. It's not always just getting the playbook. It's a comfortability in playing quickly sometimes, reactionary Schlegs, that's maybe more of the hurdle to overcome.
Well, the hardest thing about this, guys, when you recruit somebody that's 5-star, Barrett Browning is one that comes out in my mind from Kendall, Texas, and you put him into a box of being a Mike linebacker. Now he's an edge rusher in the NFL and doing a really good job. So, CJ's kind of like that. He's got a lot of wiggle. He can do a lot of different things, but you also got to have a really dense linebacker room, of which we only play 2 guys. And one of them is Cody Simon, your block O winner, your captain, right? And then Sonny's done a really good job at Sam. Then you also got Arvell, and you got Gabe, and you got all these different guys in there. And like, where is the fit? How does he add value? How does that play in the scheme? And also, who is it that we're playing? Like, hey, we can have 3 linebackers when you're playing Iowa, or you're playing somebody that wants to run a football like a Michigan. Where is that fit? Is he the Sam in that? Does Sonny go back to Will on that? Like, you just don't know. But you got to put the best guys out there. And so it's not, I wouldn't say any of it is about like what CJ has done or not done, but just where is the fit within the defense and who they got and who they're playing. Yep. So, crystal ball, like, you never know what's going to happen. But, every single time you step out there, you have an opportunity to grow. And the great thing about CJ is that he's just taken that approach that I'm going to just get one step better every single day. And when I get out there, I'm going to put my best foot forward, play as fast, hard, and violent as I possibly can.
He's continued to improve. And that's the thing. Yeah. He isn't disenchanted. He's worked hard. I love CJ. I think I love him. He will be a vital player for this Ohio State team. I want to throw quick one up here from Randy with regard to Penn State. Do you feel like Penn State are pretenders again? I got to say, I watched them against Illinois, UCLA, all 4 quarters, both games. Do not impress me on offense, especially I don't think Aller is that guy. And what's interesting is Drew Aller played really well against West Virginia, pushed the ball down the field, did some good things. He's made some big plays at different points. I think there's still room to grow with him. I mean, he's only a guy that's in his 2nd year as a starter, so he's not a finished product by any stretch. Allen and Singleton, their 2 running backs, are both very good. So the question is, can they get the production on the outside, and can that defense still be impactful? I think Penn State, we talk about contender versus pretender. I think they're ultimately, Schlegs, a contender for the playoff. Are they a contender to make the national championship? That might be a bridge too far from what I've seen so far this year.
We kind of look at it this way, Bob, like, the key to them is winning 1st and 2nd down. We just talked to Geoff about it, right? Like, all these other teams, he just said, like, the differentiator that we have is you have a break glass thing and Jeremiah Smith, right? And you also throw a Mecca in there. Like, we just have so many different weapons to be able to attack somebody, along with having the number 1 scoring defense and number 1 total defense in the country. You look at Penn State, great defense, great running game. You're able to bottle that up and have to force a guy to be one-dimensional and, like, push the ball down the field. We saw that with Penn State last year. That's the same thing we're talking about, right? And last year, Oliver was averaging like 6 yards of completion. So when you struggle because of maybe some of the skill positions, and teams can then make you one-dimensional, make you have to force the football, then to your point, Bob, it's not necessarily a pretender. They can contend to make the college football playoff, but they contend to win a natty or potentially win the Big Ten, to be determined. But for them, it is based upon how they do on 1st and 2nd down to allow Aller to be successful.
All right, we got Chris Plank, Sooner Radio Network, SiriusXM, Mad Dog Sports, coming up next to break down Red River here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like. I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, now we get to welcome in our guy, Chris Plank, Oklahoma Sooners Radio. You can hear him on SiriusXM, Mad Dog Sports, doing a lot of stuff. everywhere hopping on for us today. We appreciate you taking some time with us, Chris. I know that you're one of the busiest guys, and this is the first Red River that'll be an SEC rivalry this year.
Different world, right? I'll tell you one thing, Bobby, that's interesting about it is it's different because it's a whole new brand and it's a whole new group of people that get to experience this. So I'll tell you, the crazy thing about it is you had Big 12 people that cared about this for the longest time, and they would always cover it, and they would bring it, and they would be there. Now with the SEC, it's almost as if you're having to tell me, yeah, this is a big deal. This is something that's been a big deal for a really long time. And I hope it's an enjoyable game. By God, I hope it's an enjoyable game. But it's the traditions and it's the history and it's, father and son, it's grandpa and dad. I mean, it's like people that have gone to this game for 50 years together, and they're able to enjoy it now with a whole new audience that's paying more attention to it than ever before. It's really exciting.
Because you're obviously there with Oklahoma, and I love watching Oklahoma's defense, and they got a challenge this week in Texas. And I was just looking up this nugget. Texas has had 86 plays over 10 yards, 60 of those coming through the air. I mean, this is going to be a big-time matchup. And we saw, I thought Tennessee's offense was really good, and, they were able to put them in check a little bit. But, what's this going to come down to for the Oklahoma's defense versus this Texas offense to make this a game?
Yeah, and that's it. Overall, I think that defense is the strength of this Oklahoma football team. But what's crazy about it is, that the matchup is going to be good when you have a good defense, regardless of who it is. But it's wild because Oklahoma might have a better defense than Texas, but Oklahoma going up against Texas's offense is a little bit of a different animal. Now, I don't know if Texas is a better football team than Tennessee. I think Texas is going to lose a game this year. It's going to happen. It might be on Saturday in Oklahoma. But, not only did Oklahoma slow down Tennessee, but they showed a blueprint that even Sam Pittman in his post game for Arkansas talked about using in order to slow down the Tennessee attack. So I'm excited to see what Oklahoma does, at least from a strategy perspective. Now, this is where you guys can break it down much better than I can. But will we see them go with more of the three-man front? Will we see them go maybe with a little bit more of the 4-3? They've shown that they've been multiple. They show they can do more things. So Teddy Lehman, a guy that I mention a lot whenever I come on with two great backers like you guys, the former Oklahoma backer, he said he feels really good about the matchup. So whenever Teddy said he feels good about the matchup, I think it makes everyone feel a little bit better about things. And we don't know who's going to be a quarterback for Texas right now. I mean, you can have Steve Sarkisian saying, oh, right now it would be Quinn Ewers, but we still have a couple days of practice, and Sark usually meets with the media one more time before kickoff. So I don't know what kind of difference, if any, it makes in what they do offensively. I think Arch is a little bit more mobile than what Quinn Ewers is, but I'll tell you what, I love that Oklahoma has the confidence about what they played against Tennessee, making the plays in the right moment against Auburn, to carry that in after a bye week to feeling good about being able to slow down Texas, because I think Texas has the best group of skill players that Oklahoma's seen so far this year.
Blake, you've been a part of this rivalry for a long time, and you've seen the ebbs and flows of Oklahoma having runs, with Stoops, and then Texas having runs, kind of swinging back and forth. How much does experience matter in this rivalry, having been in it, having played in it before?
Yeah.
It's a unique style game.
It's big. I think it's really big because it's so different. It's so unique, Bobby, than anything you've ever been a part of and anyone has ever been a part of as a player, as a fan, as a coach. And when you've been in it, when you can experience it and you can share that, hey, this is what's going to happen. It's going to be odd because when we're at the 30, we're going to be able to communicate fine. But as soon as we get across the 50, we got to go silent now. It's a different world, man. And I think the experience, which is why I think it's so paramount for Quinn Ewers to be able to go for Texas. I really do. He's been in this. He knows what it takes. He's won one. He's lost one. I think he's a really good quarterback. And I think having his experience, at least in this setting, makes all the difference in the world. Conversely, Oklahoma's never had a true freshman start this game at quarterback until Saturday. Michael Hawkins is going to become history. He'll become the first true freshman in the history of the University of Oklahoma to start at quarterback in the OU-Texas game, which is wild when you think about it. So I'm really big on experience being necessary, and Oklahoma doesn't have a lot of it on the offensive side of the football when it comes to not just the Red River rivalry, but also just football, college football in general. But they have a lot of it on the defensive side of the football. And I think that's where your team leaders, the Billy Bowmans, the Danny Stutzman, the Woody Washingtons of the world, they really have to step up to make sure that they're setting the foundation for Saturday.
Yeah, defense is definitely going to have to limit the big plays and get some turnovers. And we've seen that in this rivalry where a team, Texas, I think over the last 10 years, have only won 3 of these, if I'm not mistaken, over the last decade.
You're right.
So defense is really going to have to step up, help with field position. Having a freshman quarterback, what is the offense going to have to do or establish to make this a game?
Couple of things. Something they haven't done yet this year. They got to run the football. And that might be quarterback run that was, paramount in Oklahoma's win last year, guys. You go back to last season, Dylan Gabriel ran the football efficiently and effectively, and it made all the difference in the world. It opened up everything. The guy that ended up being OU's leading rusher last year had 1 carry for -1 yard against Texas. And Gavin Sawchuk is who I'm talking about. Hasn't had a good start to the season this year. Maybe this is a game where things get going a little bit for Gavin Sawchuk. They desperately need for it to, but you gotta win the run game battle. That's number one. The team that rushes for more yards usually wins this football game. And then secondly, they can't turn the football over. They just can't. When you score 50 points a game, you have a little bit of a margin for error. They're not scoring 50 points a game, so they don't have a margin for error. They can't turn it over. I'll say this, with the bye week added in, it's as healthy as the original 5 projected starters on the offensive line have been. So maybe having another week with those guys together now. The 5 projected, first week starters finally played a full game together against Auburn. They had the bye week, and now they have this game. So you hope that they're able to protect the quarterback a little bit more because if that line is healthy, they got a really good chance, I think, to do some things on Saturday. But you got to protect the football, and I think you got to win the running game battle. And I'll add one more. The Sooners are just ravaged injury-wise at wide receiver, ravaged. But you need some of these guys, the J.J. Hesters of the world, the Zion Raggins, they've got to step up, and you need a big game from your tight end. So I know I laid out a lot there, but that shows you just how much of a question it's been for Oklahoma offensively this season.
Oh, it's been very interesting, Plank, but we appreciate you spending some time. It's going to be one that everyone's locked into. We've always been locked into it. Normally more of a noon start, if I'm not mistaken. Going 3:30 here. Yeah. Is that you okay with that? Yes?
Well, not really. As you can tell, I had to do it for my car today because I'm out running errands to make sure I get everything done to give me plenty of time. Here's what's weird about it. We're staying in a completely different hotel, Bobby. They've stayed in the same hotel forever, for like 20 years, and we're in a different hotel this season. The team has started flying down to Dallas over the last 5 or 6 years. So you add in new hotel, 2:30 kick, 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern kick. It's a whole lot of new. But once you step foot on that turf and once you realize the pomp and circumstances of the moment, it's unmatched. And I think this is where legends are made for Oklahoma and Texas. And I think it's setting up to be a fun one come Saturday down to Dallas. I can't wait to get down there.
Absolutely. He's Chris Plank, one of our favorites. Give him a follow at Plank Show on Twitter.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, guys.
Have a good one. Sooner Radio Network does a great job there. Live from I-35. Schlegel, I think, on his way down to the Texas State Fairgrounds. All right, coming up next, we'll wrap up the show. Here at the Bob Cover Show.
We were called soft last year. You don't want to be soft, especially when you come to the playoffs. So that's going to be a process throughout this season of establishing us as a harder team here in the.
I'm Garage Beer, and this is Bobby Carpenter.
Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
Beef with an F? Okay, my bad. It's crisp and cool, and it doesn't taste like. I'm Bobby Carpenter. I drink in garages because my wife says I don't belong inside. If you like a cold breeze on your bag, drink Garage Beer. It's American, and so can you. Garage Beer. Beer flavored beer.
I don't buy into this nonsense, this conspiracy nonsense that he's got his money and he's dogging it. That's ridiculous.
All right, Schlegs. 10 seconds. Give me your parting thoughts.
No, I just like what Geoff said. Didn't think about it, but moving the pocket, edge, like being able to contain, setting the edge is going to be paramount in this game. And I'm excited to watch it.
Hey, our guy John Simon says it all the time. Edge shutters are what you need in football. That's it for today's show. Tune in tomorrow for this edition of Bobby Carpenter Show.